The first cold snap reached Gossamer Pole Station a week earlier than the charts predicted, sweeping in on a sapphire wind that shrieked across the radar dishes and sheathed every door hinge with armor-thick ice. Tala Reyes stepped onto the metal catwalk outside Engineering Module 6 and felt the rail seize beneath her gloves. The aurora hovered overhead in curtains of radioactive green, beautiful enough to stop her breath if the temperature hadn't already stolen it. It was barely the first week of September, and the thermometer read 40 or 7 degrees. Inside, the memory furnace shuddered like an iron animal chained to its plinth. Heat coils glowed, but the output meters kept sinking. 2 kilojoules above redline, then 1. Tala watched the numbers fall, wonder growing colder than the air outside. She removed her goggles and scanned the row of canisters stacked beside the furnace. A dwindling forest of silver cylinders, no thicker than wine bottles. 59 remained. Each cylinder held a single, harvested recollection. Joy or grief, triumph or terror, whatever emotion had fused a memory hard enough for the furnace to seize. When incinerated, a memory released its entire chemical codex in a single radiant burst. 7 minutes of heat, enough to energize the thermal loop that kept pipes from freezing and blood from thickening. After combustion, that memory vanished from its donor as though it had never been born. The station's annual resupply convoy always delivered fresh fuel casks, bundles of obsolete wartime nightmares, volunteered by veterans in exchange for pensions. But the convoy's last transmission said only Mayday before dissolving into static. Somewhere between Svalbard and the pole, the cargo ships had succumbed to the shifting ice shelves. Gossamer Pole now faced 8 months of night, with fuel for scarcely 2. Chief Engineer Anika Rudenko convened an emergency quorum in the mess hall. Frost laced the ceiling vents, and power-saving bulbs cast everyone's faces in jaundiced light. 12 engineers, software technicians, and biologists sat around an aluminum table scabbed with scratched initials. Anika locked eyes with each of them in turn. "The math is brutal," she began. "We need to cut usage by half, and still we fall short. Unless we find another 90 memories to burn." Silence. The hum of a generator, 3 corridors away. Yusuf Chowdhury, the botanist, cleared his throat. "Couldn't we cannibalize non-essential modules? Melt wiring, compress plastics?" Tala shook her head. "Power density is a joke compared to mnemonic combustion. The storm season will tear us apart before solar returns." Anika unfolded a printout of inventory figures. "We do have a reserve," she said. "Us." No one spoke, but chairs creaked as bodies involuntarily leaned back. They all knew the protocol. It was just never supposed to reach them. Emergency Annex C allowed stations to harvest personnel memories if an existential threat presented itself. The Annex's last line read, "To be used only if mission critical." Tala felt sweat bead despite the frigid air. She had assembled half the Annex's language herself back at headquarters, comforted by the abstract promise it would never come to this. Yusuf tapped the table. "Let's be rational. Each of us could spare a memory or 2. We've all lived 30, 40 years. 90 memories divided by 12 people? That's less than 8 per person." Marius Hayes, the communications officer, snorted. "Easy arithmetic when you're counting someone else's childhood." Nina Lopez, the station's medic, lifted her tablet. She had been reviewing the cognitive studies since Anika called the meeting. "Erase 8 core memories, and we risk identity fragmentation. People forget motor skills connected to context, languages, equipment protocols, even faces. Our ability to perform specialized tasks will degrade." Anika's stare stayed ironclad. "Then we choose strategically. Sacrifice non-critical recollections. Tala rubbed her temples. Memories were not like files you could drag to the trash. The furnace needed emotionally saturated recollections. Birthday mornings, funerals, first kisses. The drab Tuesday spent balancing spreadsheets produced almost no caloric output. Still, she said nothing. She was thinking of her brother's laugh, the way he had screamed down the Manila seawall on a skateboard the day before a typhoon hit. Could she burn that? Feel the heat that shaved another 8 minutes off the night, while his silhouette disintegrated from her mind, leaving only the scent of salt with no face attached. Marius folded his arms. Why not prioritize the comatose patient? They all turned toward the infirmary door, at the far end of the mess hall, behind which Rafi Okoye lay under sedation. The Nigerian glaciologist had slipped into hypothermic shock after a crevasse fall 3 weeks earlier. Machines breathed for him now. Nida answered, too gentle for the room's hunger. His family asked us to try the new vaccine protocol when the convoy arrived. Without it, he's still got a chance. We harvest, we sign his death. Arguments volleyed for an hour. Lottery systems, volunteer pools, message requests to central authority, begging for emergency evacuation. No solution. Thawed the air. At last, Annika ended the meeting. 1800 tomorrow, she said. We decide then. That night, Tala lay on her bunk, listening to the pipes groan. She wondered which memory she would offer if it came down to it. Her mind jumped, as it always did, to the red hammock day. She'd been 7, perched between her mother and father, in a canvas swing strung beneath coconut trees. A passing typhoon had stalled over the coast, but in the eye's calm, the 3 of them had dangled in bright silence, world turned green through a curtain of salt spray. Her parents were gone now. Floodwaters. Same typhoon a day later. That memory was the only photograph she possessed. She pressed a palm against the aluminum wall. Heat bled away instantly. Outside, the aurora danced like some cosmic accountant, tallying what little remained. Morning came slow, gray and choir quiet. The station's corridors smelled of antifreeze and ozone. Tala met Marius in comms to scan long-wave frequencies, praying for any hint of survival from the convoy. From the hazed windows, they saw only the creep of hurricane-speed spindrift. At 17:30, 30 minutes before the scheduled vote, Yusuf sprinted into engineering. "Everybody to the furnace," he panted. "Now!" They found Annika on a ladder beside the intake manifold, face smudged with grease, one of the memory canisters in hand. "I've tested something," she said. "Watch." She injected the canister and sealed the chamber. Flames licked the viewport. The gauge shot high, far higher than any single cylinder had ever reached. 11 minutes of surge output. The red warning LED flared. When the burn ended, Annika turned, triumph and terror mixing in her eyes. "It was a composite memory," she said. "I combined 3 minor recollections. Separately, they were worthless, but synchronized, they reached critical density." Jules, the youngest engineer, adjusted her glasses. "Composite burns aren't authorized. The furnace algorithms say the entropic backlash can misfire." Annika gestured to the melting frost on the pipes. It worked. Tala found her voice. "Whose memories did you fuse?" Annika stared at the floor. "Mine." The room fell silent again. Annika seemed unsteady, like someone learning to walk. "I can't recall my graduation day anymore. Just blank film where confetti used to fall." A brittle smile. "But look at the meter." The discovery changed the calculus. If they could weave scrap fragments into fully burnable braids, Perhaps they could spare the core memories altogether. Nina ran neurological models. Tala and Jules wrote code to assist in emotional synergy lists. Within hours, the mess hall whiteboard was full of color-coded charts. Amusement plus fear, awe plus melancholy, nostalgia plus disgust. They mined diaries, audio logs, casual recollections of lunch conversations and lost train tickets. The first batch of 20 composite cylinders bought them 75 extra furnace hours. Spirits rose. People laughed for the first time since the convoy's silence. But the extraction technology was hungry. To reach lattice density, every composite needed at least one primary thread, a vivid anchor capable of wrapping flimsier memories around it. Soon, they found themselves harvesting precisely the kinds of moments they had hoped to protect. Marius surrendered the day his daughter learned to whistle. Yusuf forfeited the moment his grandmother taught him to fold injera dough. Each anchor's deletion left its donor bleeding inside. No physical wound, but a psychic gape. After 4 days, the stockpile climbed to 120 cylinders, enough to coast through February if no systems failed. The sense of reprieve almost felt like victory. People began sleeping again. Only Tala lay awake, counting their trajectory. She had run the numbers in secret and knew the awful truth long before she voiced it. At 0200, she paged Annika to engineering. "We still come up short," Tala said, as they stood beside the furnace, whispering over its low moan. "We forgot to account for turbine decay. Bearings are rated for 18,000 hours. By December, friction losses eat 20% more fuel." Annika closed her eyes. "How many memories?" "Another 40 anchors." Annika looked around the dark room, as though expecting memories to sprout from the steel floor. "We'll fracture if we burn that many." Tala swallowed. "We need an alternative anchor. Something massive, shared. A single memory holding weight for all cylinders." Annika's brows knitted, then lifted. She glanced at the data tower that housed the station's event logs. A terabyte of recorded experiences from every crew who had rotated through Gossamer Pole since its construction 14 years ago. The orientation tours, the Christmases, the emergency drills, a tapestry of collective remembering. "The station memory," she whispered. Technically, the archive was property of Central Authority. Erasing it would demolish the institutional knowledge future crews relied on. But every person currently alive in the outpost shared slivers of those same events in their heads. The archive held footage, not feelings. Could it be sacrificed? They summoned Nina for a second opinion. The medic scanned the psychosemantic indexes. A recorded memory lacks biochemical trace, but if you watch footage often enough, your brain tags it as personal. Many of us have anchored on those logs. Tala stared at the console. Christmas 2174. She had watched that clip a dozen times, roaring with laughter as past crew sang carols in reindeer thermal suits. It felt like one of hers. Annika ran a heat yield estimate. Combustion of the full archive, converted into quantum-encoded memory shards, would generate enough energy to carry the station to the equinox. No further harvesting required. "That's it," Annika said. "We burn the archive." Debate the next morning was volcanic. Marius argued that future crews would be blind without the logs, doomed to repeat every mistake. Yusuf countered that there would be no future crews if the present one turned into ice sculptures. Jules calculated redundancy. 68% of the video events overlapped with living crew memories, but 32% did not. Those lost angles were unique vantage points. Camera drones hovering over ridgewalks, voice diaries from staff long retired. Burning the archive would create ghost gaps in history. Yet the arithmetic was pitiless. Vote tally: 7 in favor, 4 against, 1 abstention. The archive would burn at midnight. Tala was among the 4 dissenters, though she didn't say why. She spent the afternoon in Module 3, queuing final backups to a private drive, small enough to hide inside her parka lining. She couldn't save everything, but she preserved fragments. A geological survey where fresh snow looked like dunes on Mars. Rafi Okoye, lively before his fall, explaining glacial chimes. A grainy clip of Annika, staring at the horizon during her first rotation, whispering, "The world ends somewhere out there." Night settled. The aurora was faint, as though holding its breath. The crew gathered in engineering, wearing expressionless faces. Annika loaded the crystalline cartridges, shards of the archive compressed into 30 glass pebbles that clinked like billiard balls. She offered Tala the ignition key. Tala hesitated. She remembered laying down the first fiber-optic cables when the station was raw skeleton, how she dialed her brother on the inaugural comms link and shouted that she was touching the top of the planet. The logs from that day were inside those pebbles. She slid the key into the console. Flames erupted. The furnace gulped collective memory and roared like a dragon waking. Heat smote the room, vaporizing frost off beams. Output gauges leapt into territory-coded ultraviolet. The station shook as turbines throttled to accept the surge. For a moment, Tala feared the structure would tear in half. When the blaze subsided, an eerie quiet followed. The furnace's hunger was sated. Energy reserves climbed green across every monitor. Relief swept through the outpost like warm tidewater. People hugged, wept, laughed in hysterics they would half forget by dawn. Next morning, the temperature inside the habitats was a balmy 16 Adixu. Coffee steamed instead of freezing. Nina performed cognitive checks. No immediate personality shifts, no mass amnesia. Life marched on. The crisis, it seemed, was over. But the outpost felt different, thinner, like a canvas deceivingly stretched. Conversations contained pauses where shared references used to live. Marius joked about the 2172 ping-pong flood, but no one laughed. The footage was ash, its details gone. Yusuf mentioned the ridge fireworks from first winter. Blank looks answered him. The gaps widened with each day. People knew events occurred. They still carried personal pieces. Yet the communal angle had vanished, stealing calibration points. Arguments sparked over simple tasks. Which lever to prime before opening the shield doors, which route the original venting crew had mapped through the crawl spaces. Dozens of tiny instructions were housed only in the obliterated archive. Mistakes multiplied. Early December, a valve mishandling flooded Module 4 with ammonia. 2 hours in hazmat suits fixed the leak, but cost 8 cylinders, drawing down their margin again. The furnace's victory started to look Pyrrhic. Then Rafi Okoye died. His organs failed during a power hiccup when the life support monitor reset to factory defaults. The protocol for manual override had been tucked in a training video from 2169, now non-existent. Nina screamed at the walls. Yusuf punched a console hard enough to fracture his wrist. At the funeral, held under the pale orange glow of emergency lights, Tala stared at the bagged body ready for ice internment. In her pocket lay the data shard she'd smuggled. 3 gigabytes of outlawed memories. But even if she re-uploaded them, the furnace had destroyed the only reader capable of decrypting that format. The knowledge was locked behind glass she couldn't break. Guilt dragged her into insomnia. She wandered corridors at night, past frost-feathered portholes, feeling the heat hum through walls fueled by ghosts. One dawnless morning, she found Annika sitting alone in the mess hall, cup of cold tea in hand. "I can't remember the station anthem," Annika whispered, staring at the table. "We used to play it during launches. How does it go?" Tala tried, but could summon only the opening 2 notes, then static. Annika looked up, eyes ringed with exhaustion. "Did we do the right thing?" Tala wanted to answer yes, that they were alive, that survival justified the cost. Instead, she said, "Does the question mean anything if we can't remember the alternatives?" Winter deepened. Outside, darkness wrapped the sphere of their little world, a pressure cooker of cold and silence. The furnace still spat heat, but each roar now sounded to Tala like a mispronounced name. She dreamed of hollow photographs, faces blurred beyond recognition. Early January, she retrieved the illicit drive and walked to the roof hatch. Aurora lights flickered overhead. She placed the drive on the parapet, unsure what gesture this represented, confession, sacrifice, or prayer, and watched frost enamel the casing. She realized she couldn't remember where exactly she had met Jules for the first time, or what joke Rafi liked to tell. Those memories weren't in the drive. They were supposed to be safe inside her. Yet they frayed, as though too near the furnace's gravity well. The station had become a place that fed on recollection like a starved bear gnawing bone. Perhaps there would be none of them left by spring. Only functional husks, operating equipment, alive but unanchored. 2 days later, a faint radio signal whispered through the blizzard. A scouting drone from Central Authority, relaying that a new convoy would launch when the pack ice relented. Salvation months away, but tangible. The announcement stirred cheers, but Tala tasted ash in her mouth. What would it matter if rescue arrived to find 12 living strangers sharing no history? She returned to engineering that night and stood before the furnace. Its casing radiated gentle warmth, purring like a cat now that its appetite was sated. Tala pressed her palm against the metal. Behind it lay every laughter, every song, every cautionary tale they had scorched to keep their blood liquid. She wondered whether a civilization could survive by devouring its past, whether humanity at large might one day adopt this technology, corroding lineage for heat, roasting diary pages to boil water, smelting wedding vows into electricity for neon signs. She imagined entire cities glowing from hearths, fueled by obliterated childhoods. Tala removed her hand as if from a wound and whispered an apology, unsure to whom. Perhaps to herself, perhaps to the world that had entrusted her with its northernmost memories. No answer came, only the steady heartbeat of a machine that could never know regret. When she finally slept, she dreamed of the red hammock day for the last time. In the dream, wind-rattled palm fronds and sea spray gleamed on her mother's hair. Her father laughed, pushing them higher. But the hammock fabric slowly unraveled, threads turning to smoke that drifted upward, coiling into green lights across a polar sky. She reached for her parents. Her hands found only cold metal railings. The memory wavered, dimmed, threatened to vanish. Before it vanished entirely, Tala felt heat on her face, heat like a furnace door swinging wide, and she woke in darkness, holding on to the sound of surf that might already have been ash.